Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating area, though maybe one you don't think about every day, the global metal powder market.
That's right. It's kind of behind the scenes, but absolutely critical.
Exactly. And we've got some fresh research here, mainly the Global Metal Powder Market Report 2025 from Cognitive Market Research.
A pretty comprehensive look, it seems.
Yeah. So our mission today is really to pull out the key insights for you. What's the size of this market? What's driving its growth? The hurdles it faces and how it looks region by region.
And understanding this stuff, it really gives you a window into the future of manufacturing, I think. It touches so many industries: cars, electronics, aerospace, you name it.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a big number to grab your attention. This report. It's projecting the global metal powder market to hit, get this, USD 250 million in 2025.
Wow, okay, 7.25 billion.
But wait, there's more. They expect it to basically explode to USD 323.92 million by 2033.
Okay, that's nearly double in, what, 8 years? That's massive growth potential right there.
Huge. So what's behind this surge?
Well, the report points to two main engines here. First, there's the wider adoption of powder metallurgy.
Right, that's making parts from powder instead of, say, casting or machining.
Exactly. It often means less waste, and you can make really complex shapes pretty cost effectively. And the second big driver is additive manufacturing.
Ah, 3D printing. Makes sense. We hear about that everywhere.
Yeah, and metal 3D printing is really taking off.
So let's just nail down those growth numbers again. USD 750 million for 2025.
Correct.
And the average growth rate, the CAGR, is projected at 7.70% per year between 2025 and 2033.
Yep, 7.7%. And it helps that they've used 2024 as the base year and looked back at data from 2021 to 2024.
Right, gives it some context. So you have the history, the estimate for 25, and then the forecast out to 33.
Precisely. Makes the projection feel a bit more grounded.
Definitely. Okay, let's zoom out. How does this break down geographically? Where's the biggest market right now?
Okay, so North America takes the crown currently. Over 40% of the global revenue, according to the report.
Over 40%, that's substantial.
It is. They're looking at about USD 2,682.50 million in 2025, with a projected CAGR of 6.2% through 2033.
Okay, 6.2%.
Mm-hmm.
And within North America, is it mostly the U.S.?
Yeah, the U.S. is the dominant player there. About USD 2,116.49 million in 2025, growing at a slightly slower 6.0% CAGR.
And Canada and Mexico.
Still significant. Canada's around USD 341.90 million, but with a higher CGR actually at 7.0%. Mexico's at USD 244.11 million and 6.7% CAGR. So good growth there too.
Interesting. So what's really fueling North America's lead?
Well, it's a mix of things. The report mentions a strong uptake of additive manufacturing, like we said, also the push for lighter parts in cars, which is huge.
Right, fuel efficiency and now EVs.
Exactly. And just ongoing improvements in powder metallurgy itself, plus big investments in EV batteries, a strong aerospace sector, and this growing field of nanopowder technology.
Nanopowders, so like super tiny particles.
Yeah, incredibly small. They can give materials unique properties like extra strength or conductivity. Very cutting-edge stuff finding its way into applications.
Makes sense. Okay, so North America leads. What about Europe?
Europe's the second biggest, holding over 30% of the market share. Their 2025 size is estimated around USD 202.50 million.
And their growth rate?
Pretty solid, too, a CGR of 6.7% expected through 2033, slightly faster than North America overall.
And within Europe, who are the key players? Germany, I assume, with their auto industry?
Absolutely. Germany's a big one, USD 416.30 million market size in 25, growing at 6.9%. Their automotive innovation is definitely a factor.
Okay, and the UK?
The UK is also significant, USD 353.22 million, and actually a faster projected growth at 7.5%.
Interesting.
Yeah. France, Italy, Russia are also mentioned as important markets, each with their own kind of growth dynamic.
Okay, now Asia Pacific. We always hear about growth there. How does APAC stack up in metal powders?
Well, currently it's about 23% of the global market. So smaller than North America or Europe right now, roughly USD 1,740 million in 2025.
Okay, 23%.
But this is where it gets really interesting again. APAC is projected to have the fastest growth by far.
Oh, yeah. How fast?
A CAGR of 10.4% between 2025 and 2033.
Wow, double digits, 10.4%. That's flying.
It really is. That's significantly faster than the other major regions.
So which countries are driving that incredible growth in APAC? China?
Yep.
India.
Both are huge contributors. China's market is pegged at USD 730.80 million in 25, growing at 9.9%. Think rapid industrialization, the massive electronics sector, plus big investments in batteries and 3D printing.
Makes sense. And India.
India's growth rate is even higher, projected at 12.3%,
Hmm.
starting from a smaller base around USD 174 million in 25, but driven hard by automotive, construction, and defense needs.
12.3%.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And Japan and South Korea are also important, growing steadily too, around 8.9% and 9.5% CAGR, respectively.
So the picture is North America leading now, but APAC is really closing the gap fast, potentially overtaking them down the line.
That's certainly what the growth rates suggest, yes.
What about the other regions? South America, Middle East, Africa. Are they significant?
They're smaller, but still showing decent growth. South America is over 5% share, about USD 275 million in 25, growing at 8.4%. Brazil's a key driver there.
Okay.
The Middle East is around 2% share, maybe USD 290 million, but growing quite fast at 9.0% CAGR. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are notable.
9%. Interesting.
And Africa holds about 1%, roughly USD 160 million, growing at 8.0%. South Africa is the main market mentioned there. So yeah, growth seems to be happening pretty much everywhere, just at different scales.
It really does paint a global picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears. What kind of metal powders are we talking about? Which metals are most dominant?
The report is pretty clear that iron and steel powders are expected to continue dominating the market by type.
No surprise there, maybe. Very widely used metals.
Exactly. They're just fundamental for so many things. Additive manufacturing, standard powder metallurgy, making sintered components.
Sintered components,
Yeah.
like parts formed by pressing and heating the powder.
Precisely. Think gears, bearings, structural parts in cars, construction, aerospace. Iron and steel powders are everywhere, and the demand from EVs and 3D printing is just adding to that.
Okay, so iron and steel is the heavyweight. Are there any other metals making big waves?
Yes, aluminum is highlighted as the fastest growing segment.
Ah, interesting. Why aluminum?
It comes down to its properties, really. It's strong, resists corrosion well, and crucially, it's lightweight.
Lightweight is key these days.
Absolutely. So it's getting picked up more and more in 3D printing, for thermal coatings, obviously for lightweight structures in cars and planes, and even in EV battery components.
Right. Makes sense.
It also gets used in paints and pyrotechnics, but the industrial side is the big growth story. The report also gives a nod to copper, nickel, and others, but doesn't break down their shares in detail.
Got it. So, iron and steel for volume, aluminum for growth speed.
Yeah.
Okay, now where are these powders actually being used? What are the main applications?
The automotive sector stands out as the largest application segment, by quite a margin, it seems.
Again, maybe not a huge surprise given how much metal goes into a car.
Right. They use powders for lightweight structural parts, transmission components, engine parts, you name it. And processes like metal injection molding MIM and traditional powder metallurgy PM are really good for making complex auto parts cost effectively.
MIM, right, for intricate shapes.
Yeah. And as we keep saying, the EV boom is adding whole new layers of demand powders for battery tech, for thermal management systems.
It really seems like automotive, especially EVs, is a recurring theme here.
It absolutely is.
What's the second biggest application area after automotive?
That would be electrical and electronics. And this sector is expanding rapidly, too.
Okay, what kind of powders and uses are we talking about there?
Mostly things like copper, silver, aluminum, nickel powders. They go into semiconductor packaging, conductive inks for flexible screens or circuits, PCBs, and also shielding to block electromagnetic interference.
Ah, shielding. Important with all the wireless stuff.
Definitely. And think about 5G rolling out, the Internet of Things, wearables. All these trends are pushing demand for these specialized powders. Plus, nanopowders are finding uses in advanced sensors and batteries for these devices, too.
Fascinating how these tiny powders enable all that tech. The report also mentions machinery and others, right?
It does, yeah. It just acknowledges them as application areas without going into the same level of detail on market share for this report.
Okay, so let's dig into the underlying forces. What are the key market dynamics? What's really pushing this market forward?
Well, on the driver's side, we've touched on most of them. The continued growth in the auto industry is number one, that relentless demand for lightweight, high-performance parts, plus the whole EV transition. Second, the ongoing development and use of nanopowder technology. These advanced materials open up new possibilities in aerospace, electronics, medicine, 3D printing. It's a big enabler.
Right, those super tiny stuff.
And third, the growing need for energy storage. Batteries, essentially. The demand for specialized powders for better batteries is a really significant driver.
Those all sound like strong long-term growth factors.
Hmm.
But what about the flip side? Are there things holding the market back? Restraints.
Yes, the report points out a couple of key restraints. The main one is probably the cost. Metal powders can be quite expensive.
Why is that?
It's a combination of things. The raw materials themselves aren't always cheap. The production processes like atomization, turning molten metal into powder, use a lot of energy, and getting the high purity levels needed for some applications requires complex refining.
So it's just an inherently costly material compared to, say, bulk metal.
It can be, yeah, which might limit its use in some applications or for smaller companies. Another related issue is the sometimes limited availability of those really high purity powders needed for the most advanced applications.
Okay, cost and availability of the highest grades. That makes sense.
Mhm.
What about emerging trends? Anything new popping up?
Two trends are specifically highlighted. First, the electronics demand we talked about, needing smaller, more effective components, conductive inks for flexible devices, better shielding. That's constantly evolving.
Right.
Second, there's a growing adoption of those sintered components we mentioned earlier, using powder metallurgy to make precise, strong, cost-effective parts. It seems more industries are recognizing the benefits of that approach, moving away from maybe more wasteful traditional methods.
That ties back nicely to the powder metallurgy driver we started with. Okay, this sounds like a busy market. Who are the big companies, the key players?
It's definitely described as competitive. Companies are focused on growing capacity, making strategic deals, and innovating naturally. Some names the report calls out are Höganäs AB.
Okay, big Swedish company, right?
That's them. Also, Sandvik AB, another Swedish giant, Rio Tinto Metal Powders, GKN plc from the UK, and Advanced Technology and Materials Co. Ltd, or AT&M, from China.
A mix of established players. Any recent moves that show this competition in action?
Yeah, a couple of examples were given. 6K Additive partnered with Metal Powder Works specifically on copper powders for 3D printing.
Okay, specialization.
Exactly. And Sandvik acquired a U.S. company called Buffalo Tungsten, strengthening their position in tungsten powders, particularly in North America.
Strategic acquisitions, yeah, that signals an active market.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just quickly recap the regional leaders again. North America dominant in 2025. Why again?
Primarily, it's the strong adoption of additive manufacturing, the constant demand for lightweight auto parts, and just a well-developed powder metallurgy sector. Plus those investments in EV batteries, aerospace, nanopowders, and growing use in defense and medical fields, too.
Got it. And Asia Pacific, the fastest growing. What's the key there?
Rapidly growing automotive production, general industrial expansion, and again, increasing use of additive manufacturing. Countries like China, Japan, India, South Korea are big in aerospace, electronics, PM, and you have the EV push plus government support for manufacturing really adding fuel to the fire.
It creates a really clear picture. So if we had to boil it all down, what would the author of this report say are the absolute main takeaways?
I think the author's conclusion really hits three main points. First, significant global market growth is happening and expected to continue with that strong 7.7% CAGR.
Right.
Second, iron and steel powders remain dominant by volume because they're just used in so many things.
Makes sense.
And third, the automotive sector is currently the single biggest end user of these powders globally.
So for you listening, big picture, this global metal powder market is large, it's growing fast, those speeds vary by region. Automotive and electronics are huge drivers, and technologies like additive manufacturing and the shift to EVs are really pushing things forward.
Exactly. It might fly under the radar sometimes, but it's a market that's fundamental to innovation across so many areas.
Okay, and on that note, here's something for you to chew on. Think about the ripple effects of this growth. We're talking breakthroughs in materials science enabling new tech, potential shifts in where and how things are manufactured globally, changes in supply chains. So the question for you is, what innovations or applications do you believe will be most transformed by the evolution of metal powders in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? This unseen market is really shaping our technological future. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.